Yes, we're back. What is happening, Pod Gang? My name is Emil Walker, and you are listening to Inside the Ride, a podcast that digs deep into the highs, the lows, and the pursuit in finding purpose of some of this mental planet's most exciting people. Last month I headed to India, and in doing some research for this trip I came across a documentary called Subah-e-Banaras about Varanasi, one of India's most sacred cities, if not the most sacred. I found the award-winning director Praveen online, and he was happy to accept my invitation and jump on the podcast. He's an extremely humble guy who lives and breathes Varanasi. Having worked as a marine officer on ships for nearly 10 years, he fell into filmmaking when a documentary crew from Canada came on board one of the boats. The director invited him back to Canada, where he spent a number of years progressing his skills in the video world and even ended up in Hollywood working on feature films. After probably the best part of his life away from home, he felt a longing for India and the sacred and spiritual practices that nowhere else in the world could quite compare to. He moved back to Varanasi and started a successful production company called Moonlight Pictures, and hopes to leave behind a legacy with the work that they produce. Living in the West, where stress and anxiety sadly seems to be increasing at a pretty alarming rate, I was amazed to hear that not once has anyone been stressed about their work at Moonlight Pictures. Before we started recording, Praveen mentioned that he and his staff spend 1 to 2 hours every morning meditating together before work, so I imagine that probably has something to do with it. His outlook on life was something unique and different to anyone I've ever met before. He and his core team don't take a wage from the company, but instead reinvest all the money back into making films and documentaries.
If you think about money, you will get money. But maybe you will lose out, on the quality of life. The contentment, the bliss, the blessing, the life it is. Living, the spontaneity of the moment. Enjoying the life in the best possible way. Maybe you will miss out on those things, And you might have seen, the richest of the people have departed this world in a very unhappy way.
We started the conversation talking about the morning rituals in Varanasi, as they feature quite heavily in Praveen's documentary. I have a few words to read from the narration which should give it some context. Subah-e-Banaras is the natural splendour of morning and the Varanasi way of life, coming together in a splendid coincidence. People don't come here expecting pleasures, they come here in hope of finding bliss. That infinite bliss which the goddess of morning distributes here every day. So that's a short bit from the documentary. I will also put a link in the description if you'd like to watch it. I very much enjoyed this conversation and I look forward to sharing it with you. Please make some noise for Praveen. What is it that you think makes the morning part, the morning by the river, such a kind of spiritual and holy experience for everybody?
The first thing is that Varanasi is the oldest living city in the world.
I've heard.
So, when we say the oldest living city, there are many cities, like Rome, Athens, Babylon, Cairo, there are many, but you can only see, the ruins of the civilization, which has already, gone past long back, But in Varanasi, the thousands of years of civilization is very much alive. And there are still, the traditions, the customs of the age-old traditions, which are still you can witness in Varanasi, not only the banks of the rivers but also in the lanes, in by-lanes, in the lifestyle of the people, in the perspective of the life that they live. And this makes it very, very unique, because somehow this city has preserved this age-old cultural beauty and heritage, and which is very much even evident now. So, along with the visual beauty of the Ganges and of the sunrise, there were many, many other aspects, I thought we should capture, which is very unique to this city. So, we went deep into the areas, where people live along the ghats, which is called Pakka Mahal. And we looked at the life very closely, and we found it very, very interesting, because they have the philosophy of life so much right, and they're so happy, so much living in contentment in their lives, and that is what they call it Banarsi Pan, the unique lifestyle of Banaras. So I thought, that while I was scripting, that if I would be able to show a glimpse, of this philosophy of life, which is so much unique in Varanasi, where people are at peace, with themselves, where people live a life of bliss. So there were so many other aspects, and while shooting, we tried and to capture, not all of it I can say, but yeah, the most important ones that we could conceive.
I saw that you've worked abroad quite a lot in Canada and the States. Yeah. So how do you think, or why do you think that people here live with so much kind of content and happiness, even though from monetary and from financial point of view, they might not be doing that well, but they seem to be so rich in everything else? What do you think that is that brings that?
Yeah, so you're right. My film journey, it started from Quebec, from Canada, where I met a great filmmaker, Michel, and he became my guru. And I started learning filmmaking from him, and I worked with him. And then he suggested me, and he recommended me that I should take a formal training as well. So from Canada, I went to USC, to Los Angeles, to USC School of Cinematic Studies in Los Angeles, and then later to UCLA to further educate myself, in filmmaking. I lived there for quite some time. It was a great experience, great learning experience, I would say. But I found one thing that, people were not in the kind of bliss that I had seen back here, I belong to Varanasi, to Banaras. And there was a certain pull, which was pulling me back, to my own city. And so I decided, that I should get back here, and work on the films that I believe in, to tell about, this philosophy, to tell about, the beauty of, the culture and the tradition this country has to the world, in my own way through my films. So I think, coming back to your question, I think the philosophy of Sanatan Dharma, the eternal Dharma, which this country has lived, for ages, the philosophy is so profound, and it is so meaningful that if you are able to assimilate, even a part of that philosophy and understand, the first thing that will happen with you is you will get the right perspective of life. And the reason, people here, they live in contentment and they live in this bliss is because the philosophy of their life is just right. The perspective is just at the right place. So they know that, it's one life, it's supposed to be lived, in the most fulfilling way that it can be lived. And although material things and money has got its place in life, but one should not run after that. And in lieu of that, suffer, the consequences. So there is a perfect balance and harmony in their lives. So the people, if you meet, who represent, this kind of philosophy, this kind of perspective, it will be a very enlightening experience to meet them, because they are very prosperous, they are very well off, but yet, they're very simple, because they have the philosophy and the perspective just right in their life.
Yeah, it's very inspiring being here and just kind of being sucked into it all every day and having interesting conversations with just kind of anyone in the street. It's been quite an experience. And I keep thinking kind of back to back to people I know at home and back to people I hear about at home that suffer from depression and anxiety and mental illness from feeling like they're not achieving what they want to achieve or getting what they want to get. And I don't know, it's something that is constantly around that I hear about on a daily basis. But I don't know, do people suffer from mental illness so much out here?
Well, the modern metro cities are all alike in the world. And as a consequence, of living in these crazy cities, you will find that people, get, to suffer, from depression and from all these problems. Well, that is there. I would not say that it is not there, but it is there like any other major city in the world. But as you travel deeper, inside India, into smaller cities, into smaller places, and as you said, in Varanasi, when you met people, you will find, that there's a different way of living life altogether. They are still upholding, the virtues, of the oldest living eternal dharma, the righteous way of living. They know how to live their life. They're not bothered. They're not worried. There's no anxiety. There's no running, after something. And when someone has, these things, in the right place, in the right meaning and understanding of life, then yes, I would say that, what there has to be, that he has to be worried about. So definitely the quality of life, it changes, and I think it enhances.
And it feels like there's a nice sense of harmony. There's kind of craziness, there's motorbikes, there's chaos, but at the same time, people seem very kind of at peace. And another thing that you touched on in the documentary is how, there's Hindus, there's Sikhs, there's Christians, there's Muslims, and everyone just kind of is at one. And I like that walking around. Like suddenly you're like, oh, you're in the Muslim quarter where everyone's doing the stitching of the saris and stuff, and it just really works. Why did you feel like it was important to bring that element into the documentary?
Well, as you might be aware, that India, Bharat, our country, India, has always believed, in universal harmony, in universal brotherhood. India is a country which has welcomed everybody, through, millions, through thousands of years, through, since millenniums, you can call it. And we have always believed in living, in harmony with each other. You must have felt, while you were here, that, people were very welcoming.
They really are.
You wrote to me and I said, why not you come over? We just met,
Thank you for inviting me to your studio.
You're most welcome. You will find, people are welcoming because they believe in this philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means, that the world is one great family and universal brotherhood. We all are, brothers. So when you travel in such places, you will really find, that people are living in great harmony with each other. And especially in this city, if you see, there's a very good, mixture of Hindus and Muslims, and a little bit of Christians, and a little bit of Sikhs as well. And primarily, because of this, the city is called having a Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb, where, all the cultures, both the cultures, they live, in harmony with each other. And that was the reason, if you would see that I wrote, the text of voice-over narration in a mix of Hindi and Urdu. It was not pure Hindi. It was a mix of Hindi and Urdu. Even the opening poetry was in Urdu. And so many shots, if you remember in the film, I have shot in the mosque, and I've shown the wonderful artisans, the Muslim brothers, who are working in their own field, and how much important contribution they make, to this society, to this city, to this country. So I wanted to depict that, So I carefully, did that.
Yeah, it was very well designed. You mentioned earlier that you kind of had input an element of like a feature film in it. Do you have a background in feature films?
Oh yes, I mean I'm a formally trained, film director and producer, and while studying filmmaking, you're taught all kind of films, So literally, I can make any kind of films, Plus, I got the great opportunity of working in Hollywood, on some major productions.
In Hollywood?
Yeah.
Wow.
And also, while I was there with my friend and guru, Michel, in Quebec. So I would say that I have been very fortunate, to get, the right kind of knowledge and the right kind of exposure and right kind of understanding and training in any kind of filmmaking. So here at Moonlight Pictures, we make any kind of films. We also do fiction, we do non-fiction, documentaries, docudramas, musical films, corporate films, ad films, anything, that excites us, we take up that project, and we work with a lot of passion, trying to do the best that we can do. I have a great team, a wonderful team, of very, very creative people, very passionate. You met, Shitish, who's a creative director, and then Abhishek, who is a cinematographer with us. They all are part of our core team, So we believe in whatever excites us. We believe in taking in that subject and trying to do the best justice that can be done. And also at the same time, trying to be original in all our films. I mean, we try to be original in the treatment, original in the music, original in writing the film, in shooting the film, in all the aspects of the film. We try to be original. And technically, as I said, I'm a trained, filmmaker. So I have a very good understanding of all the processes of filmmaking. So that helps me, to keep an eye, how the DOP is doing, if I can fine tune that, or how the production record is doing, or in the post production, how the sound has to be done, or the editing has to be done. So that really helps,
Yeah, it's kind of almost. It's good to see that you still get stuck into a bit of everything, because that's a sad thing that I see with people once they move up a level and start their own production company or something. They get sidetracked much more into the business side, but it sounds like you're still involved with all the creative bits as well.
Well, I consider myself to be an artist, a creative person. And this is where my passion lies. I'm not a businessman. I did not take up filmmaking for, making it a business, to earn money out of that. Money is an important part, as I said, but living, the philosophy and the right perspective, as I was mentioning, that you see in Banaras, I live, the same philosophy in my life, I belong to a spiritual tradition. I was initiated by a great, spiritual guru, and who gave me this right perspective, of life. And I try and, live that philosophy in my life. And my priority always is, to do the creative best that can be done. So we have people to take care of the business side, but my heart, and my passion lies in, doing the creative perfection that I can do.
Did you always know you wanted to be involved with filmmaking from a young age?
Well, I never knew that. That's a very interesting story, because I never knew that, because you may not be knowing that I was a Marine officer earlier.
Yeah, I saw on your LinkedIn, actually.
Yeah. So from being a captain in the Marines, I did this, crazy transition of becoming a filmmaker. I was a writer. I was a poet, right from early ages, I had a passion and a flair for writing. I used to write poems and stories and, skits and, plays. And I was a photographer. Photography was my hobby. And I used to do a lot of photography. But I never knew that I would become a filmmaker. It's just that, I was on a ship, which went to Quebec. And there, I got instructions, that you have to be, there's a film unit coming on the ship. And ship is a dangerous place, So he said you have to take care, of the safety and the security aspect of the film crew. So I was made, the main safety officer, and just overseeing that, everything that they're shooting, the way they're shooting is done in a safe manner, and just help them out, And I was just doing that, and I met this great filmmaker, Michel, and I just helped him, in whatever. I mean, furthering, the tradition of that you see in Benares, being welcoming and being friendly and being helpful to them, and I really helped, in the best possible way that I could, because I could see, they were struggling in certain scenes, and the technical advisor was not very well informed himself, So that's where, I struck a chord with him, and he said that he was very thankful to me. And in return, he said, when I left the ship, I should come to Quebec and stay with him, for some time. And I said, okay. I mean, I didn't take it seriously. But he kept on reminding me that, that I have to come and stay and I should not forget this promise. So I went there, I went to stay. I thought, okay, let me just stay for a couple of days and see, if just keep his words, basically. But he had a beautiful house on the bank of St. Lawrence River. And on the first floor of the house was a huge studio, a film studio.
Nice.
And the first day, I just used to see that there's a lot of sound coming in and people walking in and out. So the second day I just walked up, and I just sat there. There was a huge screen and editing was going on of a film, and I just sat there. And I don't know what happened to me at that moment. It just came to me that this is something I've been looking for. I'm born, to be a filmmaker, and such a beautiful process this is. So I used to just sit there and watch. And then he used to finish his work, and then me and him, we used to go for a walk, and we used to, go out, to a restaurant to eat something and talk, about a lot of things. And I started, asking him questions about, the whole world of cinema. And then I said, if he would like to teach me filmmaking. And he gladly accepted. What a great man he is, And he just accepted that. And he said, okay, sure. Because he was an honorary professor of cinema at the University of Laval in Quebec. So I started learning filmmaking from him. And that's how it all started. I started learning from him, and then I started working with him. And then I got more and more interested and passionate about, the world of cinema. And then eventually I started making my own films.
When did you end up in Hollywood?
So from Quebec, from Canada, I used to be going off and on, coming back to India, and then going back there, and then working with him, and then learning from him. And then he said that, probably, I should take a formal training as well. So I said, okay. So I applied, in the USC. And luckily my older brother was there in the management school there, So he helped me, with the application and all those things that you have to do, the, essays that you have to write, and the recommendations that you have to give, the GRE that you have to take, and all that, went through all that. And luckily, there was a phone interview, and they informed me that, I've been selected. I said, wow, I could not believe it, So I said, okay. So I took, a visa from Quebec itself, I went to Los Angeles and started studying in cinema there. This was in late 90s. So it was almost 20 years now.
And then how long were you there before you decided that it was time to come back home?
Well, I was there more than 2 years. And then off and on, I was going and coming back. And then 7 years back, I decided that enough traveling I've done, hopping around the world. It's time, for me to get back to my country. And there was a deep inspiration coming from within, as if my gurus were asking me to come back now and work, in India, from India now. So 7 years back, 2012, I came back. And I, along with, my wonderful creative team here that you met, we founded Moonlight Pictures. And since then, we have been, making films. There are many films, you can watch many of them, on our website, We'll gift you some of them, that we have here.
Are you from Varanasi originally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Originally, I'm from Varanasi.
What do you love most about this place?
Everything. Everything. As I said, you see what happened, I tell you. I was in New York once, and when this movement came, so I had to go and meet a friend. I was on vacation in New York, and there was nothing important, I just got in the subway and, got down, and I just saw that everybody was just rushing. So I also started rushing. And then I came out, of the station, and then somewhere, walking fast and rushing, along with the crowd, near Central Park. And suddenly I asked myself that why I'm rushing. There's no reason for me to rush because, there's no hurry as such, I'm on vacation. I have to just meet a friend, and it's a very informal kind of meeting. There's no kind of, time constraint here. And I just stopped. And I started seeing, people were just watching around me. All of them rushing. And I thought, and I asked myself, is this the way I'm going to live my life? What tempted me to just, rush when it was not required? It was, probably the surrounding around me, that just forced me to do exactly what they were doing, And I thought, I'm an artist, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a creative person. I cannot do justice, with my art if I, have this kind of mindset, of rushing and, having so much turmoil, in your head, not clear about things, and getting affected so fast. And I think that's when I decided that, I have to go back to a place where I can, sit and relax and contemplate, reflect upon, the ideas, my own scripts, and then, make some kind of meaningful films that I believe in. So that's what, it prompted me to come back.
It's funny, isn't it? I feel like when I take a trip or I go away, I have a lot of time to be with myself and I can relax, and it seems so crazy and foreign to be rushing and be busy and be stressed, but like that's what it's like for me in London, and we create that stress, and it's kind of, it's so unnatural, but it feels like, yeah, everybody else is doing it, so why shouldn't it be normal? But I guess to some extent for me it does feel stressful here, but like I mentioned before, it's like an equilibrium of stress and harmony at the same time.
Yeah, you're right. You see, now this rushing and this kind of, stressful life is very infectious, if you're in that surrounding, you get affected by it. Now, if you come to a place like Varanasi, now, if you see from top, superficially, you will definitely see there's a chaos, it's not very well organized, the traffic is chaotic and, probably not, the cleanest of the cities that you'll see around the world. And not very well planned because it's a very old city, the urban planning is, all haywire. And there are certain issues, which you rightly point, and coming from a Western country and myself, living in the Western country and coming back and comparing, on that physical gross level, definitely there's a huge difference. But you see, underneath this, if you just forget, the gross physical aspects, of the city, if you just look a little bit underneath, if you feel, the pulse of the city, the vibrations of the city, the life of the city, then you will find, that there's a great amount of harmony here. There's a great amount of peace. There's a unique vibrations that you will find, which is very, very spiritually beneficial to you. It'll be very relaxing for your own self, for your mind, for yourself to just, relax, and, it's going to take you into some other dimensions, the life which you may not have experienced earlier, So that's the strength and that is the beauty of this country and especially the city. And that is what actually pulls a lot of people from around the world. And that is what actually pulled me back, because in my childhood, whatever I had witnessed, had lived with me. And it was very clear, in my mind that I will not settle anywhere in any other country, but I'll come back one day.
It feels like with the other podcasts I've done, speaking to people here, there's this higher sense of consciousness that people are all a bigger part of. And meditation, mindfulness, yoga, there's these Eastern practices that have become hugely popular in the West. And I think they're understanding the qualities that they possess. Is that something you've experienced traveling to Western countries, that practices that you have maybe grown up with that have been a part of your whole life are now spreading to other parts of the world?
Yeah, definitely. Coming back, what makes this town very special is because, as I said, it is the oldest living city in the world, and in its thousands of years of history, this city has seen some of the greatest saints, walking this place. And there is a samadhi, of some very great saints, still in the city. I mean, just imagine Lord Buddha. He chose this city, to preach his first sermon more than 2,000 years back. So you see how important spiritually, how significant the city has been for ages. So the cumulative effect of all these things, all these spiritual traditions, the saints, the rishis, the siddhas, the spiritual traditions that people have been following, that you will see still, in along the banks, in various places, it definitely, has a cumulative effect, on the environment of the city, on the vibrations of the city. And that is why it makes it very, very special. Now, I have seen around the world, that definitely the West has taken a lot of interest in, they've started calling yoga as yoga, Ayurveda is Ayurveda, Tantra is Tantra, Aghora is Aghora, that is the kind, the way they pronounce it. And there has been a genuine, a lot of interest in people around the world, in the Western countries especially. And it is because, that they are really great esoteric sciences which have their roots in this country. And I think West has not only propounded it, but actually, many people have made, billions of dollars out of it, And there's a huge industry that I've seen in the West, But unfortunately, in my experience, I saw, because I've been traditionally trained in a Guru Shishya tradition, the oldest, the richest, the most powerful tradition this world has is the tradition of the Guru and the disciple in a spiritual heritage. So I belong to a lineage of very great Gurus, and I've been traditionally trained, in that Guru Shishya tradition. And so I have a very deeper insight, and a very great understanding, very in-depth understanding about yoga, about tantra, about aghor, about Ayurveda, because these are the things, that you learn in a tradition. So, sadly, most of the places what I witness around the world, they are trying to emulate it. But it is, again, on a very superficial level. But if they come and if they live with the Guru here, and try to assimilate his wisdom and his teachings, and then make a part of his own life, and then live that philosophy in life, then I think it would be a great enriching experience for anybody, for any Westerner or for any person from any part of the world. So I think the real gurus are not all that much, around in the world, but yet, it has been made a huge industry, where a lot of people are propagating it and they are, teaching these sciences.
But I guess it shouldn't be about the money. It should be about the experience you're getting from it.
Absolutely. It should not be about money. You see, you have to understand, the great rishis, the great seers, the great saints who discovered and who founded, these great sciences, they lived a very, very simple life in forest, in jungles, devoid of any material possessions and any comforts. So their intent was not, to make money out of it. Their intent was for the benefit of the humanity. You see, in Sanskrit, it is said that sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasyat dukkha bhag bhaved. It means, what a great, see the beautiful, subtle philosophy of universal brotherhood I was talking about. It says that sarve bhavantu sukhi, may everyone on this planet be happy in bliss. Sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu. I mean, everybody should be free of any disease, any problems. Everybody should be a great, human being, and may nobody should ever suffer, from any sorrow. See, that was, the kind of determination that these great people who founded, these great sciences, that is what they have given us. It's a part of our heritage. It is to enrich our inner lives. Now, the Western belief and the Western way of thinking is to commercialize everything. And
Make a business out of it.
I'm making a business, and I'm being very harsh and, upfront about it.
It's true. I agree.
And I don't agree with that, because my guru, when he taught me everything that he knew. He was a great saint and a yogi. He never expected anything from me. He was such a selfless, great man. He never expected, I used to offer him and he would never accept anything from me. He gave me everything selflessly. Now, I have tried to give, to people, youngsters, my own team and, so many people I meet, I have tried to impart whatever my guru gave me, I impart to them, and I don't expect anything, no material commercial gains out of it. And I'm trying to, now give it to the world, through my films. So for me, I don't believe that, there are certain things that should be commercialized, but there are certain, these great sciences. This is, you can call it a suppository, it's a great, it's for humanity, And the core purpose is to enrich your life, to uplift your consciousness, and to live in Sat Chit and Anand, live in the truth, live in the ecstasy, live in the consciousness. That is the purpose, of this.
Yeah, I feel very inspired from, watching your movies and your films, but also from being around it constantly. It is infectious in a good way.
Oh, yes. Once you get totally infected, you will not be able to leave, the city.
I almost feel like that. I'm like, why do I want to go back to London? It's going to be raining. I'm sure the weather's going to be terrible. But then I get kind of swept away into this way of life again, where I worry about money and I worry about not having enough work and these things that really, does it matter? Not really.
You see, the first understanding about life in the Indian tradition, in the Indian philosophical tradition, is you have to give up all your worries. It is only that you say that I am worrying and I have to do this and I have to do that. That is what, the root cause of all your problems. The philosophy, the great philosophy of Vedanta, which is one of the 6 contemporary Hindu philosophies, it says, the Tattvamasi, thou art that. You are not Emil. You're not this I that you have considered to be, I. You're not I. I'm not I. We all are that great cosmic absolute consciousness of the universe. That's what we are. If we are that, if we are one with that absolute consciousness, the cosmic consciousness of the universe, then why you have to worry about that? So give up your I, may this I, dissolve in this cosmic consciousness and let, that eternal consciousness of the universe take care of everything. And it is capable of doing that. So that is what is the philosophical difference between the East and the West. I don't have any worry if you ask me. I don't care. There's a huge staff between here and Mumbai, at Moonlight. There's a huge setup. And there are huge, expenses involved. We all do our work, in the best possible way. And none of us has been ever anxious or stressed out or worried that, how it is going to happen. Now, I have to do that. I have to earn money. It is the consciousness, of the universe, which takes care of everything, because what my gurus taught me, that if you're working with the purity of intent, if you're working with absolute dedication and devotion, the existence is going to take care of it. And this is what I believe in. This is what we live,
Sounds like an amazing company to be working for. Let me know if you have any vacancies.
Well, you'll be surprised that, the core team at Moonlight, we don't draw any salary, So you have to be ready for that. All the needs would be taken care of. But we don't draw any salary. We don't believe, since we kind of, live a very different philosophy of life, me along with me, my core team, we don't believe in accumulation of money. Rather, whatever money comes, it reinvested back into equipments, into making more meaningful films, into research, into scripting, into starting a new production. Like we have now recently started a new initiative of Moonlight called Weekend Productions. So on the weekends, when we have decided to take it easy, with the professional work that we are doing, and on weekends we get together and we write, some very inspiring scripts, and we have decided to make very inspiring films, for the world. And we believe, that, we have to leave behind a great legacy. And this is what each one of us should do, actually. Leave behind a legacy. Not the riches, but a great legacy. So we are trying to build up the legacy that we will leave behind.
What an interesting way to structure a business. I've not heard of anyone doing that before.
Well, you're right, there was a gentleman, who was visiting, from MIT, business school, and he said that, he was surprised, and he said, I'm shocked, how can somebody run a company like that? And he said, I'm really thinking of doing a paper, on this concept, in which you were running, this beautiful company of yours. Because in the West, nobody ever thought about it.
Because everyone thinks about the money.
I know that, So if you think about money, you will get money. But maybe you will lose out, on the quality of life, the contentment, the bliss, the blessing, the life it is, living, the spontaneity of the moment, enjoying the life in the best possible way. Maybe you will miss out on those things, And you might have seen, the richest of the people have, departed this world in a very unhappy way.
They really have. Suicide is such a kind of prominent thing between celebrities and people that we think have the success and have it all, yet it's so sad when they become severely depressed because they don't have enough of whatever enough is for them.
You're right. You're right. Like I remember, I had a chance to meet many times Robin Williams in Hollywood.
Yeah, it was so sad.
And he was such a great person, you know, a very genuine human being, you can say, you know, a very nice person. Very nice and very warm and, you know, very good to meet and talk and, you know, no ego or no, you know, throwing around weight that he's a superstar. And I was so shocked, you know, so shocked when I heard that he committed suicide, you know. It was so sad, you know. A loss of a great human being, a great artist. I don't know why.
Yeah, I love his movies.
Me too.
Absolutely.
Me too. Genius, I would call him. So again, the problem is this, you know, the lack of the right perspective in life. So people earn money. But you see, if you don't have the right philosophy and the right perspective, there's a great chance that you will land up, you know, in something, you know, like this, where you will not know what you're doing.
Is there any kind of first steps that you would recommend to somebody who had maybe fallen into a trap of becoming too reliant on earning money to feel like they were succeeding in life? What would you maybe say to them to help them switch up their philosophy a bit?
I would definitely say that just pause, you know, for a while. Just introspect, you know, for a moment and see that, is this what life is really meant for? Ask yourself this question. And then pray incessantly, you know. If you are a Christian, a Catholic, you know, by birth, or you may be a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Muslim, anybody of any faith, of any religion, pray incessantly, you know, for the divine guidance, for the divine help. And pray that, you know, somebody, a mentor or a guru, should meet you and guide you further, you know. And if you are true in your prayers, if you pray, you know, with that intensity, the divine help, you know, will arrive and you'll be guided further. That is very important, you know.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. So what's next for you? What's your next big project, your next movements with Moonlight Pictures?
There are... we have entered into a very, very interesting phase now. And we have decided that apart from, you know, the joint ventures that we do with various countries and, you know, various companies and corporates that we work with, that is a part of, you know, to, you know, sustain yourself. So sometimes, you know, the project may not be very close to your heart, but you still try to do the best that you can do, you know. It's as per the requirement of the company or the client. So that's one part, you know, of that. Now, interesting phase that we have got into is that we have decided now that apart from all these films that we are making, we will start making, you know, very inspirational films, you know, on Indian ethos, Indian philosophy, Indian sciences, like as you mentioned, you know, from our perspective, you know, from a very deeper perspective, from a very deeper understanding, you know. And in this series, you know, now we are, there's a film which is under scripting and which is going to go on flow very soon, is a film on the Guru Shishya tradition. The tradition, the great tradition, the age-old tradition of this country, of the Guru and the disciple. And how, you know, this tradition has helped in preserving, you know, these great sciences that you hear about and the great philosophy through, you know, thousands of years. And so something like this, you know. There's another film that we are making, you know, the celebration of Holi.
I've just experienced Holi, and it really is a celebration.
It's a great celebration. See, and that celebration is part of philosophy of our lives here, What is the significance of colors, Why do we play Holi? Why it is played in such a way? How important it is to let go everything, See, there's a philosophy behind all that, So, something like that. Then there's a beautiful story that we are working with a American production company, and it's a film. It's a biopic, on the life of Hazrat Inayat Khan, the great Sufi maestro and the great musician who took Sufism to the West and who founded, this world Sufi order in America, and So there's a very interesting film on that, and then there are other productions as well, that we are working on. So mostly very fulfilling, very inspirational, very thoughtful, the kind of films that we believe in.
Well, I'm very excited to stay in touch with you and keep up to date on these new releases. If they're anything like the documentary I've just seen, I'm excited.
Oh, sure. Now we are in touch, with each other. I'll keep on updating you. Recently, we did a film, with the Australian artist. Have you seen that Happen Chance? It's a musical film that we did,
No, I didn't see that.
You haven't seen it? Okay. Well, I'll share that film with you.
Please do.
Yeah, it's a musical film shot in Kerala, in Kochi.
I've been to Kochi, actually.
So it is, we have shot that film during the Biennale. Kochi Muziris Biennale, there's a huge art festival. And this is along with two Australian artists who had come, for exploring their art and their creative pursuits, and who were part of that Biennale, So it's a musical film. You would love that. And then we also did a film for the Indian Army called, The Formidables, on the oldest Gurkha regiment, of the Indian Army. So I'll share that also with you. So there are many Please of them, Yeah, we keep on making, and we keep on, going further on this path.
Well, good luck with everything, and thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. I also really enjoy talking to you and sharing my whatever views and my perspective, with you and with all your audience who would hear that, So my regards and my salutations to you and everybody out there. Thank you
very much. Thank you. Thank you so much again to Praveen for coming on the show. If you'd like to check out some of his work, I will link everything in the description. Of course, thank you so much to you guys for stopping by to check out another episode. If you have a couple of minutes and fancy giving the podcast a rating or even a review in iTunes, that would be very much appreciated too. We'll be back with another episode very soon. So, see you then.